saw you.
I'm grooving. I'm moving and grooving.
I saw you shimmying.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Howdy. It is Thursday. It is the State of Leadership Simple and Beyond Day. That's what I was looking for.
There you go.
You know, we need to get on that calendar. It's the National State of Leadership Day. That's what we need, one of those. We need one of those. The State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond. That is Robert Hilliard. I am Whitnie Wiley, and we are here on Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific, to talk all things leadership. And today, we're going to be talking about reading. What's on your reading list? What are you reading? Summer is a great time to read. Winter is a great time to read. Well, any day is a great time to read, right? Yeah. Particularly if you are a leader or aspiring to be a leader, it is one of the commonalities between those who lead well. Entrepreneurs, leaders, and successful people are readers across the board. And we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to talk about what we are actually reading or listening to, because I do both. Do you do both?
I do both.
Okay. I do both. I read physical books. I have my digital books, or access to books digitally, and then I listen on Audible or on YouTube, right? So you can get books on YouTube. I learned that, I don't know, a year or so back, that you could actually, a lot of books that you get on Audible that you pay for, you can actually get on YouTube for free. You may have to deal with a commercial or two, but you can get it for free. So we're going to just start with why read. So the biggest thing is that reading is about acquiring knowledge, right? Opportunities to learn and to grow. It gives you additional information that you didn't have, depending on what it is you're reading. It gives you access to experiences that you haven't had, right? So that you can get knowledge and sort of live vicariously through people, learn things through other people's lessons that can benefit you, and as a leader, therefore benefit the people that you are leading. I will say this, I'm curious to hear about you, Robert, although I'm imagining that I know the answer. I have not always been the biggest reader or a fan of reading. And for the longest time, the only thing that I read that wasn't required reading were Agatha Christie books.
Okay.
And then I graduated to other kinds of mysteries and thrillers and weird books along that line. And then I went to law school. That was required reading, but it changed my perspective about reading, actually. And then after law school, I started reading for pleasure, other things. Mostly business related, personal development, professional development, things in those genres, things that help with being creative, mindset, right? And now I read all the time, and I every single day I am listening to books, and then I have books by my bedside, books in my office. There are books everywhere, and it's important that you not treat reading as an afterthought, right? That it should be part of your plan, part of your professional and your personal development plan. But curious, were you a reader for pleasure, or did they have to kick and you? They have to get you kicking and screaming in order to get you to read a book?
That is a complicated answer, because I loved reading as a kid. I hate reading the textbooks that they gave us in school because they were always 20 years behind. So, now that being said, when there was something in the textbook that really appealed to me, I would dig in there and tear into it. But I really didn't become a avid reader of, I guess you would say, academic texts until I started working in business.
Okay.
And I could actually choose the textbooks that were relevant. They weren't 20 years old. They didn't have somebody else's highlights and notes. Because, when you were a kid, you get the books, you had to give them back at the end of the year. You had somebody that, defaced the book, put all kinds of stuff in it.
Did you buy brand new books in college?
Most of the time I did.
Did you keep your books after the courses?
Of course I did. I have
we have that in common. I didn't buy used books, and I still have books from law school. People actually have books from when I studied math at Berkeley. And knowing I would never, it's not even like the kinds of things that we read now. There's no way I was ever going to use those books again, and I still have them.
I like to think of them like a reference. I have a whole wall of books in my living room. So the whole wall is one of the walls is a whole book, shelf, bookcase full of books. And I like to think of it's like having a resource library.
Yeah.
And so, in case of emergency, break glass. You never know when you're going to need a topic or you're going to get stumped on something. Go, oh, I have that downstairs. And, I've read about that before. I was interested in that before. And so you have that information. You can go back and research it. That's how I look at it. Now,
sure.
But I will every so.
I'm just saying, was never going to pull up a book. There's never going to be an opportunity.
I might ask you about.
Okay, I won't say never, but the chance that a meteor would fall like directly on my house is probably greater than the opportunity I was going to have to bring up a book on vector calculus.
I may ask you about that. I don't, but
yeah, you might.
Yeah, but what I do is at the end of every year, I go through my books and I look and I go, okay, which one of these are still relevant? I usually donate them. I never throw away books. I donate them. Or I'll say, okay, has this book been updated? And in which case I will go ahead and donate the book and get the newer volume sometimes. Okay. That's usually how I do it. So
that's fair.
I look at, because I have hundreds of books in my house, and they, it can be unwieldy. I mean, sometimes they're piled, when I'm really working on something, you'll see them piled up behind me here on the other desk. What you can't see is underneath this desk right here is a whole pile of books that I have my current research. So it can really be, it can take up a lot of space.
No, I hear you. And I don't have the library that I once had. I grew up in a family of readers, and my mother in particular, and in her house now, like yours, there are books everywhere, in bookshelves, not on bookshelves, on tabletops, piled on floors, everywhere. And that's the way it was when I was growing up, which is why it was interesting that I did not like reading, but I was into math. I had my own thing. Everybody else was sort of a reader, and I was into math. And so it was different, which was where my affinity for Agatha Christie came from. I liked solving puzzles and mysteries. And so if there was something that I could read that had, something to solve in it, I was all for it. Encyclopedia Brown was a favorite, younger than when I started reading Agatha Christie. And so, there you go. So one of the things that I shared in the post is the statistic that the average American starts to read one book a year, right? So once we're out of school, out of high school, most of us don't read anymore. And that is why it is important as a leader to actually read. And some people, I'd be interested to know, and we'll talk about this, how much you are actually reading. But there are people who read a book a day, right? And they find the importance of reading to be that high that they are devouring a book a day. I have found a way around that so that I can read a book a day and get the information from a book a day. I'm not technically reading one per day, but there are books that I'm reading, and I tend to read multiple books at one time. How do you go about it?
I don't read a book a day. I don't know that I could read a book a day
Or
because,
maybe a little book,
oh yeah, a little book I could certainly do.
a picture book.
Picture book. Oh yeah, absolutely. Only the big words, that the multisyllabic words would give me a hard time. But because I just don't read. I read, and true to my nerdish nature, I highlight and put notes in my books.
So you're not just reading to read, you are reading to truly understand, to dig in, and it's research for you. So it's reading the words, but then you've got to go and find the why behind the why behind the why and really understand it.
And you know that about me, right? Because and I have three criteria. So for example, it's something that I'm interested in and have been seeing it a lot. So usually if I'm interested in it, I'll gravitate toward it. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'll look at that. And then I'll, go to Amazon or something, and I'll see that there's, 40,000 books in that. I'm like, okay, let me see if I can find one that is going to suit me. And then if in my circle of, my social circle, like talking to you and other people that I just casually talk to, or, meet up with, if a topic and my criteria, it's got to pop up 3 times. If it pops up 3 times, like, okay, that's something I need to start looking into. And if 3 of my clients if they mention that they want to work on something, of course, they don't know each other, right? That's something that I need to look into if I already don't have an affinity for, or haven't some techniques, or don't really know the topic well. And even if I do, sometimes, like for example, when we were really deep in the pandemic, it was a given that anytime I had a new client and I would say, what do you want to work on, in this engagement? They'll say managing stress. It was managing stress, work-life balance. It was, you could almost, as soon as they popped up on the Zoom, I can say, okay, this is going to be a managing stress person. Because you could just see, they were like, you could just see it all over them. So that became something that I really started, looking into. It's something that I've worked with clients before in the past, but I wanted to get more information about it. I wanted to,
Right.
There are more techniques. I wanted to have a battery of things that I could use, of tools that I could use, because I had all different clients. And when someone says that they want to talk about managing stress, it could be, inside that there are subcategories. So it's good to have a whole lot of tools that you could use in that category.
No, and I think that's the important piece of this, right? We don't know everything, and no leader knows everything. Therefore, taking the time to read, to acquire that knowledge, will help you as you are leading others, whether it's as a coach or whatever other relationship that you have with the people that are a part of your team. And to that point, the average, Fortune 500 CEO, they say, reads 4 to 5 books a month. So, about a book a week, which is something that's a little more doable for me than one a day. But I have sort of, the way I approach it is a combination of the two. I don't tend to dig in as deeply as you do unless I have a very specific reason. like if I'm writing something or preparing for a speech or training, then I will do that. But sort of my natural inclination is to be broad and not quite as deep until I need something in particular, and then I will go deep. And so the bottom line is that we need to constantly be learning.
Yeah.
Right. We have to, and I think we've talked about this before. If you're not growing, you're dying. If you're not learning, then you're sending the message that you know everything that you need to know. And that just the way that business moves and the way our world is expanding, to make some declaration intentionally or unintentionally, implicitly or explicitly, that you have all the knowledge that you need is a kiss of death, I would think.
Yeah, that, it's so, I've worked for so many leaders that acted that way, like they knew everything, and that they don't because no one does, right?
No one does.
No one knows everything, and it puts the team members in this weird quandary, because you're looking at that leader going, I know that they're not telling me the truth.
Right.
I know they don't know everything, but they have to pretend. It's like, we're not going to tell the emperor that he's naked. We're going to let him believe that he knows everything. I've seen, what's worse. I know this is kind of off topic, but it's still related. I've seen, leaders just eviscerate people that questioned them. Just you can't ask a question about something, or politely challenge one of the notions. The person was an expert and was challenging something, not inappropriately, that the CEO was saying, and they just got destroyed. I mean, it was very uncomfortable to witness.
And the other piece of that is the example that you set, right? So it's one thing for you sort of to say, even though we know it's not true, that you know everything, therefore I don't need to read to learn. I don't need to do that. But you also send the message to your people that they don't need to learn and grow. And if you have a company filled with people, top to bottom, none of whom are reading, I'm not just talking about books, but trade journals and studying the industry, right? Studying your products, what your competition is doing, reading for lots of different reasons, then again, you're not likely to be around very long, because those who are growing and innovating will just run right past you.
Right. I just want to put a caveat to that, because some organizations, they, especially ones that aren't publicly, that aren't privately held, they can be around for a long time, but they're not going to grow. They're not going to have innovative people. They're not going to have really strong leadership and management. So I think that, I've seen those organizations, they've been around forever, but they're just
treading water.
Oh, they flatlined, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Happening there, and they talk about the glorious past, back in the day, but they're, they've hit their peak, and they're just riding on this, this flat line.
So I'm going to lay this out here. They say you are what you eat. You are what you read.
That's true too.
Right? You are what you read. And so today we're talking about what you're reading. So what are you reading, Robert?
I am currently reading 2 books and listening to a third. So right now I'm a big fan of the Harvard Business Review publications. And so in managing stress at work, this is something that, and you'll notice, you'll see that I have flags, and because, that's how I've done my nerd thing with the book. But one of the things I really like about, and they have a lot of different series. This one are the guides, right? It's the HBR guides. One of the things that I like about them is that they're articles, and I used to subscribe to Harvard Business Review, but I did, like every person that subscribes, does. I was really eager to get my subscription, read the first, 3 issues that came front to back, and then missed a couple, and then forgot I had the subscription. Everybody does this. And then I said, wait a minute, they have these books. So what I started doing is just getting the books. And what I like about them is it's the articles on a particular topic that they've gathered into a volume. So this one is managing stress at work, and it has lots of, different things in there. What I like about it is different perspectives on the same topic. And it's a reputable publication, and they have leaders that are respected in their field. So it offers strategies and techniques and things like that. This particular one, what I like is that it has information on the mind-body connection. A lot of times people forget about that. Dealing with overwhelm, managing and creating boundaries so that you can manage your stress better. And so that's just 3 of the topics that are in this one. I am also rereading, going back over this one. This one is from their emotional intelligence. You can see it there. I have my light there. Emotional intelligence series, and this one's called Influence and Persuasion. And what I love about it is it really talks about one of the best chapters in the book is the one on charisma, where they say charisma is something that you could learn. It's, they give you a definition. It's the ability to communicate a clear, visionary, inspirational message that captivates and motivates your audience. And if you have that definition, then it's a skill that you can learn. And so also in that chapter, they have something called charismatic leadership tactics. And they list out the charismatic, they call them CLTs, that you can actually use to increase your charisma. And so it's another great book from Harvard Business Review. And I think I'm going to save the audio book for later.
Okay.
Because these are things that you should do. These are things you should do. I'm going to talk about the audio book later. I think you'll find that very interesting.
Okay, awesome. So the first book I want to mention that I'm reading, and this is actually in pursuit of training that I'm doing. It's called The Leadership Challenge, Kouzes and Posner. I feel like we read them in our program, right? I don't remember.
Yes, we did.
Was it this book?
Yes.
Or a different book?
It was that book. It was that book. Yeah.
Okay.
It's
like, well, maybe that's why I feel like I'm so in tune with some of what's in here, because I wanted to share something that was in here. So anyway, it's the Leadership Challenge, and is how to make extraordinary things happen in organizations. They are, seen as some of the most, prolific and premier authorities on leadership in organizations. But there was this quote from chapter 13. In the chapters, leadership is everyone's business. And so I think, I don't know if I've said this to you before, if I've said this here in this context on our program for you and the audience, but when I started my studies in leadership, and they actually started, I was just taking classes for fun, if you can say, like you study and dig into things for fun. I like take classes for fun. So I was taking classes from the community college. I was working as a lawyer and a lobbyist, and didn't need to do this, but I had this interest I was really curious about what was going on in my organization, and why things were the way they were, why they didn't seem to work the way I thought leaders and leadership should work. So I'm thinking, well, maybe I'm just wrong. right? Maybe my ideas about leadership and management, maybe it's just wrong. So I just started taking a couple of classes at the community college. Turns out I was right. And when I realized that I was on the right track, that created a sense of momentum and some motivation to dig deeper. And so I decided to go back to school officially. And my first, going back was at USF. It is a Jesuit university. I got my bachelor's in organizational behavior and leadership. And then when I finished that, I moved on to St. Joseph's, which is where I met you, to study organizational development and leadership, get a master's. And so my philosophy about leadership was very much in line with the Jesuit philosophy about leadership. The community college that I took classes wasn't about Jesuit philosophy and leadership at all, but it was still in line with what I was thinking and what I believed would make for great cultures and environments and things like that. And just trying to figure out how to get from what I was working in to something else. And so again, I don't know if I was attracted to that because, or what, but I was reading this and I was like, if I had written this myself, this couldn't be said any better. So I just wanted to share this. Leadership, and I won't do the entire thing. It says we're focused on everyday leaders because leadership is not about position or title. How many times have we said that here, right? It's not about organizational power or authority. It's not about celebrity or wealth, blah, 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 and some things that it's not about. It says leadership is about relationships, about credibility, about passion and conviction, and ultimately about what you do. You don't have to look up for leadership. You don't have to look out for leadership. You only have to look inward. You have the potential to lead others to places they've never been. And it goes on. And when I read, I was like, oh my God, I feel like I wrote that. I feel like I wrote that. And then as you were talking about the HBRs, the book that I'm working on is a collection of articles. Now, they happen to be articles that I wrote on leadership that I'm compiling for the book, but it'll be the same concept. And what I like about your choice of the HBRs, for people who say they don't have time to read, that's a good place to read, is to read articles in the subject matter that matters to you or your industry, whatever, right? That there are ways for you to incorporate reading so that you can get it, so that you can acquire the knowledge that you need. Reading doesn't have to be you sitting down. That was my iPad that almost took a spill. It doesn't have to be you, sitting down and reading a book the traditional way. There are other ways to do it. But the bottom line is that you have to do it. And so Leadership Challenge is sort of the business related academic book that I'm reading at the moment. I am, like you, reading multiple things at the same time. They have different purposes. Another book that I'm reading, I have it on Kindle on my iPad. It's called $1 Million Consulting Proposals. And so as part of work that I've been doing with corporations and, preparing proposals and presenting them, I'm like, maybe I should learn a little bit more about how to do that. And that's one of those things, when I don't know something, I turn to reading to help that happen. And then the last specific thing I'm going to share is this book I'm reading. It's called Creative Alchemy. And this is about sort of inspiration, the muse, and being creative. I think the very first class I took at St. Joe's was a creative thinking course. And what I learned is that being logical and analytical, which is what I have historically, traditionally felt and thought about myself, is not mutually exclusive from creativity. And in fact, they go together. They're very much two sides of the same coin. And so, as a writer, as an author, I'm working on a book. There are moments when I am blocked, and I want to express something that's not quite coming out. This is a book that is helping with that. The other one is it's called The Artist's Way. I have it on Kindle as well. And it is about helping to remove those creative blocks, and has some very specific exercises and things that you can do. So Robert mentioned this, tapping into your interests as a place to get started, or something that you need to learn specifically to accomplish something that you want to do, is a really good place to get started. The bottom line is that you have to make reading a priority, and not something that you do only when you're bored. And I will say this, if I'm having trouble going to sleep, picking up a book and reading is a really good a really good way at night to be able to put me to sleep. So
I think, yeah, all of those are great points. I think, it's, to me, a very sad thing when a lot of people get promoted. I've seen, and I know this is not across the board, but in my experience, a lot of people, when they get promoted, they're like, oh, I've made it. And now people will listen to me. And I want to go, that's not necessarily true. Some people will listen to you because they are, they will react to your, what we call legitimate power, which is your position. Other people won't.
right.
And so you need to tap into other sources of influence and power in order to get to those people. And those leaders that do that get really frustrated when people don't respect their position. And and I have to tell you, I am not an obstinate person, but I will tell you that if you are barking at me from a place of authority and I think it's unjust, I will stick up for myself. I don't care who you are. I've done it to CEOs. I've done it to directors, and they're often shocked because they, and I'm not rude. I'll just be like, I remember one time, I think I told you this, I may have said it on this program. I had a chief of a department called me up screaming at me. And I remember I listened to them for about a good minute, and I said, okay, we need to restructure this conversation because I find myself getting very angry. They were like, oh. I said, this is how I would like to have this conversation. You have a lot of questions, and I would like to answer them. So why don't we do this? Why don't we take a break? You write down all your questions, because they called me with a room full of their subordinates, and I guess they were showing out for them. And I was not having any of that. And I was like, And I was like, you all can write your questions down, and then you can call my boss, who was another chief, and he and I will field all of your questions systematically. And I was told that after the hung up the phone, that person turned to their subordinates and was like, can you believe how he spoke to me? And they were like, he was not rude. I was just like, I'm not, listen, I know you're upset. I totally get it, but I'm not going to be the person, I'm not
Right.
going to be the lightning rod that takes all all of your electricity. And that's just my personality, Now, would I do that with the president? Probably. You know me. I'm just who I am. And I would try to do it in a way that's not rude, and in a way that's not
disrespectful.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for, but I want to, I know myself, and I know that if I don't speak up for myself in those, I would have a lot of cognitive dissonance later on. But and later on, I did speak to that person, and they were, they got over themselves. Like, I get why you did that. I was out of line. I was like, look, I just picked up the phone and you just started screaming at me. I had, I get you're frustrated, but if you want me to help you, let's bypass all of that.
Yeah. So I want to, I know you've got an audio book that you're going to mention, and I want to mention a tool that I use. So again, I too use audio books. It's funny. This morning I had a call for a potential collaborator. And so we're getting to know each other. We're sharing stories about our lives, our journeys, and where we come from, where we're going. And I mentioned something. I don't remember exactly what I said, but her response was, "Oh, have you read the book Vivid Vision?" So I must have said something about visions, right? My vision as a, coach or leader vision or whatever. And she says, "Have you read Vivid Vision?" So here's the thing that I really love about where we are with technology, sort of in this 21st century place. She mentions this book. I look it up and immediately go and I purchase it. So now it's on my to read or to listen book list. And then she mentions another book by the same author. So Vivid Vision is by Cameron Harold. And he also, or maybe it's a she, I didn't ask, wrote Double Double,
Okay.
Which is a book about growing your business, doubling your revenue in short order, like in 3 years. So both of these are about visions of your company and how you can grow your company and using your vision to do that. I love being able to do that, right? Where there's a thought or someone says something, and then there is a connection to something it would be helpful to learn in this moment. And so I have that. So that's Audible. But the tool I want to share before Robert shares his last book is an app that I use. It's called Headway. And if you are familiar with what's the Headspace, which is a meditation app, right? Headway, I believe, is by the same company. And what Headway does is it does summaries, audio summaries of books. And over the course of the time that I've been using the app, and I don't know how far back it goes, but I have finished 237 books, some of which I've listened to repeatedly. Like there are things that, because I didn't really read them, I listened to them, but I have listened to them repeatedly. And then I've gone to purchase the book so I can read it in its totality. It says, and here's the thing that I love. It says, I read and listen more than 99% of Headway readers. I'm in the top 1%. I'm a 1%. Wow. But the way I use this is I walk every single day. I have a dog. I'm walking. I listen every single day while I'm out walking. A portion of my walk is silent, and a portion of it I use to listen to the book. And then I think about the things that I've heard. I make notes, I record notes, I write things down in my memos that strike me from the books that I'm listening to. And I have found myself using them in this program, other programs that I do in my trainings, right? So it doesn't really matter how you go about getting the information. So whether it is from a summary and that sparks something and you get the entire book, the point is to get the knowledge, and we get the knowledge through reading. So this is not about being educated. This is not about having you be smart. It's about you gaining knowledge, continuing to learn and to grow. And the one of the ways for you to do that, in the way that people who are successful do that, is through reading. So you can read, you can listen. Again, books, it could be articles, trade magazines, listen, read, or write them yourself would be the other.
Absolutely.
Or write them yourself and do the research to support what you're writing.
Absolutely.
Your Audible, and then we'll wrap up.
I struggled with this one, right? Because I've been listening to these books. I get sucked into watching a lot of documentaries. And then when I watch a documentary about something that, actually happened, I'm like, oh, there's a book. So I ended up watching a documentary, I think it was on HBO, about the company Theranos.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I've watched a couple of those, but
yeah,
yes.
Yeah. And so I realized there was a book called Bad Blood, Secrets and Lies in a Silicon Valley Startup by John Carreyrou. So I went and I am listening to that book, and it is, it's hard to find the words. It really is, because some of the things that went on in that company are just unbelievable. So, it's one of those things that if you want to know what not to do, you want to listen to that book, or, that audio book, or read that book. But just, lack of transparency, really low morals, poor leadership, lying to investors, lying to partners, giving just really false, promises that they could not even, things that they couldn't do, lying about past experiences. For those of you who don't know what this is, Theranos was a company that were making these portable blood, analysis machines.
Were they?
They had a box.
Were they?
It had a box. And they said that it did all these things, and it did not do a fraction of what they said it was. They actually said that these portable blood analyzers were being used on the battlefield. That was a complete lie. They were telling, but what the person did, Elizabeth Holmes, that had the startup, was that she managed to get a lot of people on her board of directors that were very famous and very influential. So when she would say things, people would be like, well, she has all these people on her board, it must be true. And it went from, just stretching the truth. I don't even want to say stretching the truth a little. I'll just say it went from one lie to just a whole chain of them, to the point where nearly everything she said was a complete lie. And it's, even to the voice that she used when she talked to people, it was all manufactured. It wasn't her real voice. She idolized Steve Jobs, so she started dressing like Steve. It is stark. I highly recommend you listen to it or read the book. It is, and then compare it to what we say good leadership is. I think that, look at it, analyze your leadership through that lens, and see. And I always like to do that. Look at that, how you're leading folks based on that. There's a lot of screaming and yelling that went on in that company, which is, you should not do. But yeah, it's a great book.
I want to leave on this note, based on what you just said, which I think is an excellent point, in sort of modeling, right? Modeling behaviors, modeling what to do, and not modeling things that are not in alignment with the way that you want to lead and the kind of leader that you want to be. And so in that respect, so two things: modeling great leaders by reading, point one. The second would be to read biographies, right? Read documentaries and story and books that tell the story of the success of companies and people, so that you can find those things that you want to model that come from that. So model leaders by reading, and then model the behaviors of the leaders that you've read about through books, either from their biographies, autobiographies, or through some documentaries. And I think you will find that over time, you'll start to lead, right? Because we are what we read. You'll start to lead in the way that you want to. So, anything else before we go?
I want to put a fine point on what you said. Just be careful because there are some very successful leaders out there. And I'm going to say it like this: there are some very successful leaders out there that do things poor. Like Steve Jobs was a very innovative person. I heard that being in a room with him was, if you worked for him, he was a terror. And I can only imagine how much more productive. I mean, he actually got fired from Apple. and then they brought him back later on.
Yes.
So so be very mindful of what Whitney said is correct, but be mindful of who you are following,
yes,
who you are looking up to as a leader. Make sure there are people that are actually using really good, solid leadership skills, and they're not leading from fear or intimidation.
Right, and that they're in alignment with your values, right?
Absolutely.
If and we'll leave it at that. Your values, right? It needs to align with your values. So with that, we want to thank you for joining us for this episode. We would love to hear what you're reading. What's on your to read list? We've shared some of the things that we are reading. We will do this periodically as we are reading different things, sharing with you what we're reading, hoping to hear from you what you're reading. When people tell me that a book is a good book in a particular area, I tend to get it and read it. So would love to hear what you're reading. And we're here again on Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific. We love that you join us every single week. And until next time, take care.
Bye now.